You're listening to Flying Casual, a Star Wars podcast. Here's your host, Michael Canterbury.
Hello there, Star Wars fans. Welcome back to Flying Casual. This episode of Flying Casual brought to you by our proud sponsor, Burger King. No, actually not a sponsor, just my meal in the past 5 minutes right before podcast. Probably not the best idea. I'm really hoping I'm not the only trashy fellow here on the council that, partakes in Burger King. But a nice 9 o'clock meal for me. So we'll see how this podcast goes. I might be out in 5 minutes because when you go with that number one Whopper, medium with a cherry Coke, you're gambling there. It's 50-50 whether you'll be awake in the next 10 minutes or so. So, thanks to Burger King for that little pep for this podcast. Guys, this is our Casual Council, our monthly hangout with our Jedi Knights and Jedi Master Patreon members. Just keeping it casual, so casual. We might be talking about Rob's topic of the Mistress of Dragons here, which is not a Star Wars franchise. It may get a little, PG-13, NC-17 here on the podcast. I don't know. I don't know. There's not much Star Wars news to talk about, so maybe Mistress of Dragons will be brought up. I have no idea what's going to come out of these guys' mouths, but we've got Brent, Rob, Nettie, Jory, Luke's in house, and Scotty as well on this council. Fellas, no Mistress of Dragons, I will say. But a light Star Wars news week. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but us and the boys, we can do some theorizing and some speculation. So as you guys know, we got this shared Google Doc where we throw ideas off of each other. And Nettie brought back a blast from the past, and by a blast from the past, I'm talking less than a year ago. He drops the name Zeffo, and as if the council had never heard it before. I just see blank stares from everyone's. What's Zeffo? It's like these guys had never played Fallen Order before. Nettie, why you got Zeffo on the mind? You replaying Fallen Order right now, or what's going on?
Yeah, I just finished a replay through about a month or so ago, so yep, still pretty fresh in the mind there.
Still good coming around the second time? Were you able to appreciate that environment a little more and not focus so much on the story going on?
Yes, I definitely say held up better, and between some patches the studios made and the newer hardware, it didn't, have horrible frame drops on some of those planets, so it was pretty good. Definitely a better experience the second time around.
That's fair. Oh, that opening sequence, man. I couldn't focus. We were in that shipyard, and you're like, you got to save your friend. I'm like, but I could let him die, and I could check out the shipyard a little more, but a great freaking game. But Nettie, I mentioned you dropped the Zeffo, a name we hadn't heard in a while, a name some of our council here isn't familiar with because they haven't either finished Fallen Order or haven't started it yet. But we've got a few here that have, and you dropped some insane nuggets from this game and things the Zeffo are we're told that they have said such comments, and you were making some comparisons to the Jedi, which was amazing. I'd forgotten completely about any of this. Just that the Zeffo seem to be these kind of mystical beings that were powerful, and they're not around anymore, and you're kind of wondering, why aren't they around? Who are they? Are they? I'm assuming they're Force wielders, but what's on your mind with the Zeffo here?
Yeah, so I guess just to give a little bit of background to those who might not be familiar with slight spoilers for the game, but nothing too drastic. I don't think will be popping up. The Zeffo were like an ancient, sage species that will live throughout the galaxy, and it said they could use the Force, and they called it the Life Wind. It looks like is what the Wikipedia page says.
I love that.
But shortly before Order 66, a certain Jedi finds the ruins of the Society and kind of becomes obsessed with them, and leaves hints for the main character of the game in these ruins for you to find. So that's kind of why you're going through it all. But while you're exploring the ruins, you get some background on that society, and then at one point towards the end, you run into basically a Force vision, and you see one of these Zeffo sages, and he gives a speech, and I'll just read this verbatim from Wikipedia here. I offer this record of our civilization to those who will follow. Despite our wisdom and technological achievement, we face extinction. Dogma blinded us to the path of balance, and gradually we allowed our pride to corrupt us. The greater control we sought, the further we fell into ruin. I lead the remnants of my people into the great unknown, hoping that we finally find peace. So while replaying through it, it was mainly that line about the dogma and the greater control, and I just kind of couldn't help but notice that's exactly what happened to the Jedi Order. And, you know, in this game, when this scene happens, it's like 5 years after Order 66. So you can kind of see some of that with Cal, too, with how his story progresses, that like he kind of recognizes that. So I just kind of brought it up into my mind that I thought it was kind of a cool parallel they built into the game. And like George always says, Star Wars is poetry, it rhymes. And I know this story was written well after the rest of it, but I kind of thought it was a nice way that they kind of added that rhyme into an ancient civilization. And I just thought it was, well, you know, mentioning at least.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I had never really thought of it that way, Nettie, that they're kind of using this story of the Zepho to and how it's going to affect Cal, because he was young when the Jedi became essentially extinct at that point. He didn't really know much of this dogma, this kind of bigger than life attitude that these Jedi have, and their failures, really, because he was probably kept he was isolated from that, I guess, is probably a youngling. So it's nice that he's kind of making those comparisons to the Jedi and their experiences and seeing similarities. And I never even thought about that. That's amazing. And yeah, if there's other Force wielders out there that can actually harness great power, it's not just the Jedi out there. There's a big galaxy. There's likely others who have tried to harness this power and do good with it and ultimately become consumed. There's probably more and more of those out there, more than just the Jedi and the Sith. So it's such a, now I want to know though, right? Like, who are these people? And what Cal can do and touching objects and kind of get these flashbacks into history. It keeps things kind of vague, and kind of it gets our mind churning. And that's what I love so much about the Force Collector book. I've talked about that book a couple of times, but just kind of a young adult novel. But I just love that power. Just we can go back and visit history. You don't really necessarily know what they're referring to, but it offers good speculation. It just gives us a glimpse into what may have been and what could be. I just think that's fascinating. I think it's an awesome force power that probably isn't appreciated enough in the Star Wars fandom. But you posed a really good question too, kind of continuing on with this, like talking about the origins of the prophecies. You said, is that something that we're interested in seeing some today? Maybe are these prophecies that maybe attributed to the Zepho as well? Like, is it all kind of does it cover everything? Every Force user? Is this just like the Jedi themselves scripts? Like, what were you thinking there, Nettie?
Yeah, see, like I mentioned, I think it was the email I sent over to the podcast. I've been thinking about the prophecies a lot, which is really weird because it's been a long time since I read Master and Apprentice. But I always find myself, re-Googling them and just checking them out again. And I can't remember if that book gives any detail about where they came from. But I always think it's anytime I talk about them and think about them, it's always that's like the first question that comes to mind is like, well, where did these come from? Because you would think it has to be a fairly reliable source if the Jedi believe it, and even the Jedi that don't believe it, they still keep it in their archives. Like if they're like, yeah, this is hogwash, why would they be keeping it?
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted. It's always kind of interested me, like where it came from, and I haven't finished all of the High Republic content. Maybe it's addressed in there, or maybe they're saving that for a story for the Old Republic if they go back to there. But I always kind of thought it was an interesting story about, where exactly did these come from? Like who had these prophecies and wrote them down? Was it a Jedi? Was it a Sith? Was it a Grey Jedi? Was it some random guy on the street that the Jedi overheard? It just seems like it could be an interesting story to tell.
Yeah, could the Jedi, these prophecies, the foundations of them been built off of some other thing like the Zepho? Like, are they just building off of that and making their own thing and saying, we can do better. Yeah, we'll make everyone celibate. Like, you won't have any attachments. It'll be fine. It failed for these guys, but it's going to be cool. Well, here comes Anakin Skywalker. Turns out it wasn't a great idea. Luke, are you interested in learning more Let me ask you this: are people ever going to get sick of the story of the Sith and the Jedi? And could we then go to alternate kind of stories, and maybe it's something that feels similar, like, oh, this guy, can move rocks with his mind, but maybe it's a different culture, a different time, but it feels familiar. Could we be expanding the Star Wars universe into something familiar but a little different? I mean, could we get sick of the Jedi way in the near future?
I think it's sort of an evergreen premise. The Jedi of the light and the Sith of the dark, good versus evil. So it can go into so many realms. And what I like about new canon in general is this idea of like the different ways of viewing the Force. What was the name that the Zephos have for it, dude?
Was it the
Life Wind?
Life.
The Life Wind. Yeah. So there's
good.
that. I've been reading the Rise of Kylo Ren series again, and the Knights of Ren refer to the Force as the Shadow, and there's several new canon books which have like, different references to how other species, other cultures view the Force. In like the Thrawn books, the Chiss who can navigate hyperspace, I think, call it third sight or something like that. There's another character in the newer Thrawn novel who calls it, oh God, it's escaping me now, but it's something else, like tapping into the something. So I really like that aspect of like, there's the Force as it's been presented to us by the sort of the Jedi and the Sith story, but there's all these other cultures, approaches to the Force. It reminds me of, this might be like blasphemous to some, but in our earthly religions, there's a way of describing them that I've heard people talk about, like this old parable. If you had an elephant in a dark room and you had different people wandering around the room and touching the elephant, and if they were touching different parts of the elephant, they might get an impression of what the thing is. If they're touching like the trunk, they think it's something else, or if they're touching the leg, they think it's something else, or the ear, they think it's something altogether different. And it's just many different parts of the one same thing. Like some people say that, sort of all religions are really getting at the same idea, but they're kind of approaching it from different ways. Same could be true of the Force, but there is the angle of whether you're coming to the dark or coming from the light.
I love that. Rob, you played Fallen Order. Did this idea of these Zepho intrigue you? We didn't learn much about them. We just think that they're these powerful beings that shit came crumbling down, and it was too bad. We didn't learn much, but were you interested by that story? And when is Star Wars going to expand this universe where worlds collide? Like I'm thinking like Marvel, they've kind of, in the beginning kept things, close to, okay, then we go to Thor on his home world, but then we go to these other worlds. We're world building with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and these worlds are colliding and often having, Thanos is affecting all of them, right? Spoiler alert. But when is Star Wars going to get something like that?
To me, when I first heard of the Zepho and everything, it was, of course, with the story. Now that I'm reading a little more into it, it's almost like I almost thought Luke was going to bring it up when he was talking about religions and everything. I thought he was going to bring it up that they're kind of close to almost like an Egyptian-based religion, how that they were in temples, how they buried what they call the esteemed sages, Ilram, Kujit, and Mithril, whatever. If we said that wrong, said that right, I said whatever. So they buried them on 3 different places, on Bogano, on Thothor, I probably killed that, and Kashyyyk. And the fact that they represented themselves like that shows that they not only had spread their wealth and knowledge, but they had also went to other planets. It also says that they had a great relationship with the Wookiees. But also what I noticed about doing this, you hear about the rise, you hear about the corruption, you hear about the demise. So when I step back and I think, well, what other places other than like the Egyptians that would honor warriors like that, and it makes me think about the High Republic and how the High Republic, now I haven't read anything yet, but I've seen things and how that there's so much to it. It makes me feel that there's a lot of, let's say, fighters, knights, because that's kind of what I'm getting at. It feels to me that they're all that, in one. And then when you go to Palpatine, I think when Palpatine's rise, I think it's the same as for the Zepho. Now, going back to what Luke said about other places in time being able to view a religion, they all view the Force differently. We've heard that. Rogue One, Donnie Yen's character, how his monks always worshiped that, how they believed in it, how he didn't feel that he had the Force, but how he believed in the Force and was still able to make it look like he had the Force in Rogue One. That is a big thing as well, too. So I think that when you bring it all together, you bring all the religions, there's one common thing. It is the Force, and how all those worlds collide. That is how they all collide, and that's what I think the world beyond shadows can open up. Going into, do we want to see more of this? Of course we do, because there has to be more Cal is going to touch in Fallen Order 2 that has to at least play back to that. Because right now, if they're into opening up this expanded universe that they want to create, then I think that Cal needs to dig into this history a little more to give us all what we want, because now that we've brought this up, Nettie brought this up, there's a lot we need to know, and all of us deserve it, and Fallen Order 2 is the best way to play it.
I'd love to see these newer age historian. Like I kind of look at Cal as kind of historian, or this guy from the Force Collector. Just like these guys are gonna lead the next generation of Jedi or whoever, and they're gonna learn from the past. And it makes you wonder, like, what did Yoda learn from the past? Did he learn from the Zepho? I mean, he was a friend of the Wookiees too, right? And so were the Zepho. Yeah. Like, they seem like good dudes, but ultimately they failed. So, like, what are they learning from each other? I want to tap into that so much more. Jory, what are your thoughts on this? Could you care less about the Zepho, or is there some, is this something that interests you, or what? Where could Star Wars go and kind of expand? Because I'm enjoying what we're going to get. It's cool we're getting a Rangers or the Republic. It's cool that we're getting, some of this familiar Star Wars stuff. But my curiosity is just out the roof right now. I'm just the roof. There it is. Northeastern Ohio coming out roof. People listening probably don't know what the hell I'm saying. Roof. It's coming out the roof. That fascinates me, but maybe you're feeling kind of this more familiar stuff. Get us back to Star Wars, and then we can go on from there with some good planning.
No, I think that because this is all brand new to me because I haven't played the game yet. But from I actually think the way Rob just explained it, and he had a lot of really good points there. I think in the overarching, as far as like how we would get maybe the general fan to see it, would be, if we were going to go into a story of the Zephos, or even just a story about other. So the galaxy's huge, yeah, and even if we go into like other Force wielders, and even further into the unknown regions that we've never even heard about, still in the same universe though. We could expand, yeah, and we could still have that good versus evil, and you could just completely make. Everything would be all brand new, but still in the same universe that we know and feel as Star Wars. But I feel like it would have to be like a side story, yeah, that would, we'd go to it, be kind of like, a TV show that's 8 episodes long, and then we'll see how it does type thing, and then tie it back to the excuse me, the main universe maybe later on. But no, I think that it really intrigues me, especially for the Sweaties. I think that you get something like that. If they did something just like visually to grab the general audience, I think that people would, be like, oh, this is pretty cool. But for the Sweaties, I think, it doesn't really matter what we get. We're all going to watch it anyways. But no, I think that they do have something there if they decide to go down that route with the Zephos, and then even creating, another life force to combat them, or even if it is the Jedi in an extended, Jedi later on. But no, I'm definitely intrigued.
Scotty, as Jory's talking, something that's familiar, something that, that's got some history to it that, we would recognize that it's Star Wars. I'm just thinking of some untapped potential in the Night Sisters, and there's so much there. There's so much story. Everyone effing loves magic, right? I mean, you got these witches in this ancient history. Everyone loves Agatha. They see 2 seconds of witchcraft and WandaVision. They go crazy. It's like, we could have an entire series dedicated to some witches that would easily handle Agatha. Am I wrong? Like that? Let's see a devoted, not even just a series. I'm talking, let's world build this a little bit. These are some powerful ladies, something a little different, a society that, the women of the society they're dominant, and I think that's fascinating. We'll see how it would land with the Star Wars universe to really tap into that. I don't know with the fans, but what are your thoughts, man? Could we get a Night Sister, a trilogy? I'd be down for a trilogy of movies.
I would watch that for sure. And you're tapping into some dark side magic.
Amen.
And all this talk about sexy dragons, like I've been saying for years, all I want is Book of the Sith. Give me some dark side alchemy, Leviathans, like give me some creature creation. Like that's terrifying. Yeah. That is terrifying. Dark side magic. We're never exposed to the real like Dathomirian, like we kind of are, but it's always like resurrection or like some way of bringing a soul back. But you said so much right there. But like definitely I 100% subscribe to like characters like Cal being the future historians, the Jocasta News of the world. And there's all kinds of other like you guys didn't even mention the species or planet that the Force is like the tide or like water. Yeah. I can't remember where that's from. Maybe it's a certain point of view or one of those other books. But even like Vapad or Vapad that Mace Windu uses, I'm sure there's entire societies that subscribe to that kind of treatment of the Force. The Zepho, they give me huge like Stargate vibes, like just this old ancient species, and my brain kind of just went to like there's always the dark side, the light side, the balance. This species is specifically very sensitive to the Force, like probably all of them are Force sensitive. My curiosity goes to like, so does the timeline of balance and the things in the Force accelerate in species like this? So maybe this is also what happens to the Yoda species and why they're almost extinct, because the Force is just so immense. They're so connected within it that the balance between light and dark and that schism, it just happens faster in those races. So then a person like Yoda who survived it, he's kind of like a prime Jedi in that aspect where the prime Jedi's responsibility is to do nothing more than try to maintain this inevitability for as long as possible. I don't know. That was just kind of like off the top where it takes me with the whole Zepho thing.
Dude, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, we tend to think that like, well, it's Star Wars,
the poetry.
Can I throw in?
I like what
just
you're.
2 seconds.
Yeah, Rob.
I want to throw in when he said creating, and I thought Star Wars Galaxies for a moment. How you could be a Jedi and a creature handler at the same time. What if Palpatine didn't decide to make Anakin? What if he decided to make like some kind of monster inside of something? That's all I wanted to say. Let everybody just talk about it. That's where I kind of went with that when he said that.
Oh, dude, you're not wrong. There's two things that Sky said that just kind of made my mind race. One was like this idea of these people, like you said, Scotty, that everyone's Force sensitive. And so it's like nothing there, there's spectacle is probably kind of lost on them because everyone's got it. And it's just like, yeah, so what are the rules? Like can't use the Force with supper. Like, to put that, like, what is to contain these people? What does their hierarchy look like? Who is, who's in charge? How is this with great power? I mean, boy, with a society having such great power, yeah, what an interesting story that would be for not some darkness from outside coming within, or even, causing issues within these people, but, just kind of self-destructing on themselves. I think that would be a huge drama. I think that'd be a fantastic series or something on Disney Plus. And then, like Rob pointed out, when you're talking about creatures, I mean, something that has captivated me the most out of all the new Star Wars stuff that's come out recently. I haven't read the book yet, which is so sad, but the cover of the Myths and Fables book for Star Wars with the dragon and the guy just holding a laser sword standing there freaking blew my mind. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm like, that is epic. Where is that in Star Wars? Creatures they're involved in Star Wars. There's space whales. There's cool stuff, but man, do they really play a huge part in the story? Not usually. They're usually kind of expendable, especially in some of the later Star Wars, killing creatures all the time. But yeah, some impactful creatures like a dragon or something. Sorry, Scotty, go ahead.
No, I lost it. It's all good. Keep rolling.
Brent, what out of all this, what's speaking to you, man? I mean, are we done with dragons? Was Game of Thrones too much? Or, I'm sick of that shit. Or would you be down for some Star Wars creatures kind of dominating the screen, or maybe some other story from a people long, long ago that aren't the Jedi?
I mean, I'm always down for some more Star Wars creatures. I mean, Dathomir was the home of the Rancor as well.
Let's go.
We can always get some of that thrown into the mix there. But going back to the original topic and just a lot of the talk that's been coming up here. When you talk about the prophecies and have they possibly come about before? Do you think about the similarities as Luke brought up with even our religions and just all the similarities that occur between them, and especially within the creation of how everything's happened and progressed, and it's just how the outcome has kind of changed over the course of everything, or maybe the hero's slightly different, but the basis of all those stories is similar as you go back well beyond Christianity and even back before the Egyptians and stuff like that. It's all similar. So you think the prophecies, they're easily recycled. There's always a chosen one myth in everything. So I'm sure there was one for the Zeppo. There's one for probably all the different groups that have practiced the Force in some aspect before they became centralized with the Jedi and the greater galaxy. But because you even see you see when you get into the Thrawn books, you get into the unknown regions where they haven't been brought into the general culture of the Force, that the way it's used is strictly for navigation and not really expanded onto all the other ways that it could be used. But then you get into where the Jedi are, and they don't think about to use it that way at all, because they have the assistance of all the hyperspace and all that navigation, to where using the Force in that aspect is completely foreign to them and not even thought about. Yeah. And even in the Thrawn book, when Vader does it, it's like, huh, what? I can do this? Like, this is how you do it? And he just sounds like, oh, this is cool. But then it's never really brought up again. And it makes you think, it's like, why does he even need a wayfinder to find Exegol in the comics? Because he should have been able to sit down. He knows this already. He could be able to sit there and go, oh, I feel it. It's over there. Yeah. And just take his tie and he's gone. And he doesn't even need the wayfinder. I mean, that would be my impression. But, it doesn't make for a good comic book when you do that. I mean,
maybe the loss. Maybe the loss of limbs have messed with his directional instinct. I don't know. Something's happened to Vader.
It's possible, but there's just so many great things that you could do with it, and you can go back and you just like in our religion, there's so many different aspects you can explore with it, however you choose to approach it, or just from the spirituality aspect of it. So the Force is the exact same way, and if you want to present it to me from a different aspect, dark, light, sideways, colored, whatever, I'll bring it on. I'm totally down.
And what you say is fascinating too, because you're right. Like, Anakin in this moment, in the newest Thrawn book, Chaos Rising. God, it's been a while since I read it. Now I think that's the title.
Anakin's not in Chaos Rising.
So no, not yet. So it's the last, the second book.
Treason. Not treason. The other one. But yes, the second book, the first Thrawn series.
There it is, Alliances. Yeah. So you're right. He kind of, you're like, we do this, and Anakin's like, he kind of picks it up, right? This ability that you would think that maybe he wouldn't have. So yeah, you're right, Brent. What about the Chiss? Like, could these has a third sighter ever just tried to pull a mind trick on somebody? Is that just they literally can just, light speed navigate, and that has anyone really, do they need to tap into some dark side stuff? Is there a dark side to for them? Luke,
that's what's interesting about the Chiss, though. I think there might be, because there's the second sight that they do mention, which is that next level up where they're able to kind of read the images and the memories of the other navigator.
Yeah.
So that way the one can figure out where she had been. So I wonder, okay, obviously there's a second sight. There's got to be some sort of first sight, which I'm assuming would then be the full Jedi equivalent of complete control of the Force, which is, the fully rare. And it seems like as quickly as they lose the stuff, and as rare it is for a male to have the Force within the Chiss, it seems like that first sight could potentially be reserved for those rare males.
Yeah.
Or just something, because, biologically, there's something in there, you get into the genetics that's allowing something to, you got the midichlorians now. So obviously you just can't, discount biology and all this fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's just weird. And I'm hoping something that really comes out in the next couple of Thrawn books where they really explore that second sight and even first sight and really delve into how the Chiss use that. And I think that's really what could be possibly intriguing about this Thrawn series.
Absolutely. Yeah, Scotty.
No, I was going to say, I like that. I wonder if maybe they could even just use it as a referral to Jedi. Like maybe a Jedi is first sight and a Sith is second. I don't know, but I like where your thought process is going.
Dude, Brent, I'll tell you this. It's now I'm just like, so in this latest book, Chaos Rising with the Chiss, I don't know about you guys. I was shocked to hear how unadvanced like their technology was. Like they don't even have like shields on their ship. Like they get this shield and it's like, oh my god, like we could win everything with this. And I'm like, for me, they have such an advanced intellect, and I get a lot of that's pushed by Thrawn, but when you meet these other characters, they're very similar to him. Like he's got a little something special, but there's something about them. They just feel more advanced than any people we've met in Star Wars, yet their technology and even this like kind of Force sensitivity seems limited. I'm like, did someone wipe out the Chiss at some point and they just had to or they just kind of like a newer society? I don't know. Luke, like, have you given much thought to this Chiss history? Were you shocked by how limited they seem in their scope of technology, but their intellect is out the roof?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the chaos part of the galaxy that they're from. I think it's maybe like just a more primitive backwater part of the galaxy where life is harder and there's just more challenges, and so they've had maybe more to overcome. They haven't been able to progress as far technologically as the rest of the galaxy. Haven't been as in touch, as in communication with the rest of that part of the galaxy. So yeah, it was a little surprising. I think they had a shield of some sort, but like the shield from the Republic technology was like way, way better, way more advanced. So it wasn't like they were running around with nothing, but I think this is a great illustration of like the whole Force conversation we've been having. This, I liked how Brent brought up how the Chiss is so limited in that they can only access it. Usually, like you said, the females in the species are the only ones who can do it. And then they have these very limited purposes for using it. I think all these other cultures that we hear about and all these other names for the Force, I think for whatever reason, their practices, their abilities are accessing the Force in a much more narrow way. Whereas I think we talk about the Jedi and the Sith as like the pinnacle, because I think they can access it more broadly in the sort of all aspects of it. Nettie or you, Michael, brought up where did the prophecies come from? I've always understood it to be, or imagined it to be, that, and Claudia Gray might have hinted at this when she was kind of the one who got the deepest into it, other than George, that it's from a very sort of wise, Force in tune Jedi, just communing with the Force, meditating, and then things come to him. Like, and so like Nettie was saying, like, how do they verify this stuff? It's like, I don't know that they do. I think it's like Moses. I talked to a burning bush and it told me this, and you either go with it or you don't.
Yeah.
To some degree. So, yeah, I think the whole Thrawn new series is fascinating because it's really the only part of it to me that really still feels closely connected to Star Wars is that there is some Force ability, some Force using going on. Other than that, it's kind of its own very separate story that doesn't feel too Star Warsy until you kind of think about these navigators are using the Force and things like that, and then it still has that connection to kind of core Star Wars for me. But yeah, there's so many different ways you could use it, and some more narrowly and some much more generally.
Absolutely. I loved the biblical reference, Luke. That was because you're right. Like if this Jedi comes back, he's like, guys, I saw a vision. Maybe I was burning some bush. Maybe I saw it in a burning bush. I don't know. But like shit's going down. There's this. It's going to happen. I saw it. You can't afford to not. What if we don't act? What if Noah doesn't build that ark? I mean,
But,
you know,
my biblical scholarliness isn't top line, so I hope I got the right
you nailed it,
person
man.
in Moses.
Moses,
Okay.
you know, drop some Noah. There's some big names in there. David, you know, is a solid reference. But you're so right. Some, you know, what if they, you know, what if the Jedi didn't pay attention to this prophecy? Would anyone have given two shits about Anakin Skywalker? Hey, you want a pod race? That's great. Show me something cool. But someone believed, hey, this prophecy, this kid, his midichlorian counts off the charts, bigger than Master Yoda. Let's pay. We have to bring him in, right? What if someone else uses it? So I mean, just who knows? Was the prophecy even? We had talked about several weeks back, like its origination. What if it was Palpatine? What if it was someone else, some evil, you know, that said, hey, there's this prophecy, it's the chosen one. Better check it out when something comes up. And it's just putting those thoughts in people's minds, and then they depend on it, they lean on it. He's going to be our savior. It's like, whoa, it's just one man, a powerful man with a braid. But that's fascinating, guys. I love the conversation. Anybody have anything else on that?
Yeah, I had something just to throw in real quick. Since we're talking about prophecies and we're talking about like Jocasta Nu and, you know, timekeepers and all this kind of cool stuff, I want to make a small reference to Legends that the Killik were like that species. Let's just get this quote said right here, and it's by Jason Solo. Killiks are dangerous friends. All right.
Okay.
It popped on me. Killiks
Crazy.
are dangerous friends, but no one's enemy. That's what Jason Solo said. So in Legends, them being the timekeepers, and of course going back to the Fate series, no, I'm not going to say it, going back to the Fate series, they were able to describe events. Now, because none of us really are the best at squadrons, the Killik were brought up in canon in squadrons, in a small storyline that tied in to that game. So I haven't seen that, and I just read this right now, that if you have the Legends timekeepers, pretty much everybody writing down the mages, writing down everything, and you got those people writing all the scrolls and doing all this stuff and having different nests and stuff like that. They've been mentioned that, and they've been mentioned, I think, and they said in a book, in 1995 book, The Illustrated Star Wars Universe, the only times they've really been brought up. There's things like the Joiner King, they've had their nests destroyed, things like that. But I found it interesting that when we were all talking, it started making me think about, hey, timekeepers, let's go back and check. That was the Killik, bam, led me right to that canon, and finding out that there's a story somehow in Squadrons, which has anybody played that story?
I have not. I couldn't get past the part of the story. I never finished the game. And I'll tell you this, I did win a multiplayer match, though. Just one. So that was a milestone. Pretty proud of that one. Haven't played it since. Got really frustrated. But I'm
just throwing in that they're the talkers. They're the people who keep all the books. So if they're now in canon because of that, that just shows how they're expanding the universe for all of us to love.
I love that. Yeah, like I love that idea. And when you're talking about the timekeepers, I think of Doctor Strange for one. Looks like, who the hell's that? That's the Benny Cumberbatch character from Marvel. But I think of Ezra Bridger as just this gatekeeper of the portal. I'm sorry. Here's what I want to see out of Ahsoka. I want to see 5 minutes of Ezra Bridger, and I want Ahsoka to find him and be like, I came, I saved you. And he's just like, I'm not going anywhere. Someone's got to guard this gate, and that's me. I have been bestowed the guardian of the portal, the world between worlds. That's my calling. Okay, see you later. And then maybe we learn his story in another. I don't really want a ton of Ezra Bridger of the Ahsoka series. I think that would just be fantastic. Why did all this for nothing? I killed all these people for nothing. I think that would be insane. So yeah, mess with some time a little bit here in Star Wars. We've already done it. Yeah, it was animated, but we're making live action stories of all these characters now. So it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of time. But Scotty, what were you gonna say?
I say you got to be careful with that time manipulation in Star Wars because that'll just fuel the fire for the
That's a great point.
Trilogy.
That's true.
So we got to eat up on that, buddy.
That's true. Great point. You got to be careful with it. I feel like Ezra's a pretty reasonable guy. I can't imagine he'll go back and try to wipe out Rey or something from history. But God knows there's a lot of fans that want to do that. So
we just want to keep the Last Jedi the way it is.
Wait, you wouldn't change anything? The one thing I would change is the way that Luke tosses a lightsaber. I was kind of blown away. I was like, I feel like you just would have dropped it, but like, I don't give a shit.
I would have thrown it back in her forehead, but you know.
Yeah, use the Force or something with it. It was just kind of, I don't know. That humor was kind of lost on me in the moment. I appreciate it, but Scotty, what were you going with?
Ray should have caught it with the Force and put it back in his hand.
Can you imagine? Not today, Master.
All I want to talk about is Ezra now. Like,
let's go.
I think, dude, how crazy if like Ahsoka's blade just comes through a portal, cuts a Purgle tentacle, yanks him, and at the same time, the Purgle takes just Thrawn into the unknown regions. Like,
that'd be sick.
Woo, let's go.
I want to see Purgles in live action. That's a good call.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I honestly, I'm gonna say right now, I think we're gonna get it. Yeah, I think it'd be cool if the Ahsoka show, one of the episodes, opened up where they're just coming out on the other side, and then it's like a soft open. Kind of like what Marvel's doing with some of the blip stuff, where it's just sick. Like we get tossed into a scene where people are coming back, and you're like, "What the hell?" But before I rant off about that, the Zepho people, there was cool articles and theories about them potentially being linked to like a Prime Jedi that's in that one temple.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be cool if like the Prime Jedi thing just keeps kind of trickling down and. Who knows? Like, I'm curious about High Republic and Yoda and the one other master outliving all those people. Like, what was the real downfall of that? How long between that downfall and the founding of the new order? Like, is Yoda similar to a Prime Jedi? Could Rey now potentially be similar to a Prime Jedi, where they're just carriers of the knowledge? Like, she has all the books. Her saber's yellow. Why? You know. Those are my thoughts on that.
Hell yeah.
Should ask Abeloff.
Wow, he's done it, folks. This is. I don't have an alarm on the Roadcaster, but we have. If you're listening and not viewing on YouTube, we all have this understanding that if Rob mentions she who cannot be mentioned, you don't just take a drink; you have to finish your beverage. And he dropped it. He dropped the name. He's got her in the background here on Skype.
I feel like we've given him a powerful weapon that we cannot control.
It's a very powerful weapon. And I'll tell you this, status update on the Burger King, still setting really heavy, especially with that Coors on top of it now. So thanks for that, Rob. Holy shnikes.
Called laying the bait.
That Whopper's my base right now. It's about up in my throat. Phrasing.
But I don't know. I mean, we all talk about the whole history being written and how Ezra's part of it now. Now that the Gillick could possibly become part of it, and the way again, going back to the, part 2 to Fallen Order, if they can open that up, then there's going to be a race that keeps everything written down. That's awesome.
Hell yeah. I'm down. I'm super down. Sorry guys. Burger King thoughts. Number 1 starts messing with your mind after about 30 minutes. Starts controlling your every thought. Let's move on to some what ifs. What ifs are fun. And Brent's posed a few for this month, and oh yeah. What was the third? Sorry, I'm reading the doc right now. Well, let's start with the first one, Brent. You had a first what if. It looks like you said you're reading some Queen Shadows, and you got Sabe on the mind. Sabe was given a very was she given a very specific mission? No, she just kind of took it up on her own, I think. But you said, what if Padme and Sabe were able to find Shmi? Would this have changed Anakin's trajectory? Shmi could be the key to it all. Could she have controlled her son, if she had survived? Probably. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's a really good question because in the book, she's already been lost from Watto, and this is 4 years after the events of Phantom Menace, because it's just immediately after she's out of office. And Phantom Menace takes place roughly 2 months after she takes office. So, this is only 4 years later, and Watto's already completely lost Shmi. Whether or not she's been freed and married Lars at this time, we're unsure of. But that's just where she's at. So if they were able to get her and then, free her, obviously, then she wouldn't have become, she wouldn't have fallen prey to the Tusken Raiders. And then Anakin wouldn't have been having all those nightmares, which it was ultimately what led him to the path of darkness and started him down that ultimate fall. So, if they were able to find her and free her, it opens up that whole possibility of, what potentially could have happened to Anakin. Yeah. Obviously, if she was already freed and married to Lars, then, there would have been no need to take her, and that would have possibly could, not change things. So there's a lot of, what ifs within the what if. But it's just something to think about. It's kind of interesting to, kind of go and ponder that.
Well, it seems like things are going good, right? She's on the Lawrence homestead, like everything's fine and dandy, and then she gets kidnapped. Is Palpatine behind that? Nettie, what the hell is like? She's got a good life there. She's freed. Like, I mean, is Palpatine behind the Shmi hijack? He's like, you know what? Something's we got to start kick here. Like Anakin's dark side tumble. Like maybe I set up a kidnapping.
And same. I've had similar thoughts to that before too. So,
like kidnapping someone and sending them down the dark side, or this specific theory.
That Palpatine would be doing that. This is recorded, so I don't want to get into my personal side of things. Whether it be like Palpatine kidnapping Shmi himself and then like just dropping him on the Tusken's doorstep, or I don't think you could really pay the Tuskens to do that. I know we see a lot more communication with them in like The Mandalorian now than we ever had before, but they still kind of seem like we're going to kind of do what we want kind of people. Yeah. But, I mean, I think that could be a cool piece in the puzzle of Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin. Whether it's actually a thing, I don't know. I'm trying to remember because I think in the Attack of the Clones novelization, I think like it opens up and gives you a little bit more detail about like Shmi on the Lars farmstead. And for all I know, that might not be canon anymore, kind of like the Revenge of the Sith novel. I just know that kind of gives some more detail on that, which I think would be kind of an interesting additional information to look at for this conversation too. But I'm not sure if anybody else has read that and knows any of that or not.
Yeah, I think Luke not too long ago read it. Luke, I mean, picking mushrooms off the evaporator sometimes can you got to be careful. I mean, but I think we read the comic. I think it was in the Vader comic. We learn a little more about Sabe and what she's out kind of doing later on, right? Padme obviously knew that Shmi meant a lot to Anakin. And that, she'd failed Anakin in a lot of ways, but maybe this is one thing that she could do for him, even in her death. But I mean, it seems likely that if Shmi's fate is a little different, we may not have the Anakin that we got in Darth Vader.
Yeah, I think I've solved the mystery. I think Palpatine gave the Jawas first a Suka.
Yes,
they got all jacked on the Suka.
Bribed those bastards.
They grabbed Shmi and threw her to the Tuskens, and that was it.
Lars should have been dressing her up like 3PO. The Jawas would have left her alone.
Great point.
Oh, that's right. So first, he had to get somebody to spray her with gold glitter, so she looked like 3PO. No,
Sure fucked the cash spa that night.
But no, I have a tragic tale about the Attack of the Clones novel. I was enjoying it. I was reading it, but I had a loan from the library via a digital ebook, and I was kind of going through it slowly, even though it was good. And I only made it like halfway through, and then the rental like expired, and it got deleted off my phone. I got to go back to it and finish it sometime, because it is good. And Nettie's right; it gives a lot more detail, and I think does start off with Shmi's abduction, and sort of the goings on Tatooine for that. And no, this is a huge turning point in Anakin's life. I think if you're sort of tracking his light and darkness sort of on a meter, and the end point being sort of him becoming Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith, this is, I think, the start of that fall. It is her death for sure. I think it's one of the best acted scenes by Hayden in either of the movies he's in, and it's her death scene is a solid, powerful scene, and then you see the rage and the hate that he taps into following it. So yeah, anything that could